To all my friends out there, firstly, welcome. I hope you're safe, you're warm, and you're happy and healthy. And I think that's the first thing. And you know, if you step back and think that if 6 months ago, uh, let's say a Hollywood producer received a script, and that script said that, you know, the world is going to be hit by a, a, a virus, a global virus, which will completely stop the world and completely paralyze the world, and everything will come to a complete standstill. And we will be in a complete lockdown, and then we'll find a way out of that. That script would potentially will be thrown out by the producer, saying completely unrealistic, won't happen, and it's not going to be. And therefore, what ends up tend to happening is that we are living in what I would call unprecedented times, and times that we haven't even thought of. So because we have an exponential crisis, which we do, an exponential paralysis that we have, at this point in time, we need an exponential response. And I actually use the word reset. And you know, when we discuss this whole topic, we both address this, is that it is a reset. And metamorphosis to me was just one symbolic, metaphoric way of explaining it. So when I say the word reset, the COVID reset, Mark, in your words, firstly, welcome, but in your words, what do you feel that reset is about?
So Tariq, first of all, thanks for making this happen, the arrangement, the fact that you work with me in creating the space for this webinar, and the space is ahead of us that we want to create together. I think that, like you, I tend to see that this is quite an unmatched period of history, because I think a concurrence of a number of different factors are happening at the same time. So history helps us to understand what we did back in time, what we're facing with adversities, but we have never seen the magnitude and scale of adversity like we see now. Now, I'm also aware that when we were back in 1918, 1920 during the Spanish flu, which was the only period of time where we have documented a pandemic, one of the greatest period of growth and prosperity happened right after that. You know, yes, we were somehow hit in 1929 with the Great Depression, then we went into a Second World War. But it has to be said that the Spanish flu was somehow a reset button to push society into a different form of evolution. And I think this is really where I think the reset is.
Yeah, but you talk about the Spanish flu, and I want to build that as part of our context. Do you know that 50 million people died during the Spanish flu? And it hit up to 500 million people, which at that time was almost 1/3 of the world's population. Post 9/11, post Second World War, we had the Bretton Woods convention, and basically at that time they sort of said, well, we have to have a new world. So IMF, United Nations, World Bank, the UN Security Council, all of these came out at that point in time.
Yeah.
And what I would like to ask you is that in that reset, yes, it served us for about 75, 80 years, but are those institutions still valid for the next 70, 80 years?
So Tariq, I think that they are inevitably valid in the sense that we still need to have multilateral organizations, especially when we're dealing with global issues. The institution as they were did not get weak because of pandemic. They got weak because of the rise of nationalism, and predominantly with the Trump administrations. Those institutions, they start to suffer the lack of trust of what is somehow a significant economy like the US one. So I believe their mandate will change. Their degree of agility will need to be much more proportional to the kind of problems we're facing. I don't know whether they will be the same or they will actually metamorph into something else. But I still think that if there is one thing that will become even more fortified after this, is the need for us to have this level of intergovernmental agencies. Because the face of the problems we're going to face in the years to come, they're not going to be nationalistic problems. They're going to be mainly global challenges.
So let's look at some of the supply chains and how the whole world is interdependent and connected. Now, what do you think will be the new supply chains? And are we looking at Vietnam, India, maybe Nigeria, maybe Mexico and Brazil?
So I believe that this hybrid model will continue somehow. I also feel optimistic that we will have some bounce back because some of these companies are primarily logistics companies that distribute around the world. Standards of living and consumer are getting more and more sophisticated around the world. So I think we're going to have some form of bouncing back in some capacity, and there will be other example where some industry that got really hit really hard, they will decide at first to reduce their cost by localizing, investing in technology, but that has then a social component about what will happen to employment in those regions.
Yeah.
Finally, on your point, Rick, I guess governments in this crisis realize that interdependency or should never be overdependency. And I think we started to feel that with the provision of, for example, medical supply, if too much of that came only from one country, that becomes something that collides with national interest. And so maybe what we can acknowledge is that government will try to incentivize funds and investment to the local production of some critical supplies.
What are the big tool sets now? Because let's just look at a couple of real questions. What can people do, one, for the next 3 months while we're getting out of this? And how do they build their resilience and robustness and anti-fragility in this few months that we are in lockdown?
I think the first one is really to embrace and accept that the shock happens. Like when you crash a car, you can't not accept that the car is being crashed, right? So I think the acceptance is the first one. The second one is, what can you do with what you have right now? I always believe in the power of now, and I don't like procrastinators, right? I think there's a lot of power we can do right now in adjusting our business model. The reason why we don't do it is because we are not accepting that the world has changed.
So as we exit this session, Mark, in the next 1 to 2 minutes, can you give us a message of hope, a message of optimism? I mean, I'm not feeding you. I mean, do you believe there is hope and optimism?
So I think we are designed for that level of resilience. We have been, though, somehow tamed and domesticated not to be resilient because it's easier to control. Because when you break, you can maybe sell the service of recovery, right? I think we will learn to be different. We will start understanding social dynamics and social ties differently. We'll use soft skills that we mentioned as a way for us to define value rather than just financial. We'll expand from the narrow economic terms.
Mark, we are extremely grateful. You've been generous with your time. You've been open. We are friends, so we can connect and trust how to develop this. And my final message before Mark leaves is to sort of find a way that we should be discerning and careful in terms of the quality of the webinars and the quality of the work, because now the webinar business has become an ocean. We now need to select and pull out the ones that are authentic, meaningful, genuine, and there for a purpose to contribute to society in this particular way. So Mark, thank you for your contribution, and thank you for all the people who attended. And
thanks for everyone who joined today. I mean, it was great to see also many familiar names, and that is particularly important to me to see that you keep on following with the work that is happening around my commitment to make this a better place. And I'll see, if you wish, in a month in the same space with Tariq, where we're going to go even deeper and have more conversation. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ciao.
Thanks. Cheers. Bye.